All 5 planets are around sun god Nika, just putting it out there. That's quite true. At the end of this chapter, we've created an interesting solar system-like formation. So for anyone who doesn't know, the word star in Japanese Hoshi can also translate as planet, and it's now widely speculated that these are not the 5 elder stars, they were the 5 elder planets, and that was an intentional hidden in plain sight revelation from Oda, because they're all named after planets in our solar system, and now they're all gathering in one piece and rotating around Luffy, who is the representation of the sun. So all we're missing are the ancient weapons and maybe Imu, and we have ourselves an entire solar system. And I suppose we finally figured out how Oda escalates this conflict, because something I've been repeatedly stuck on is the idea that One Piece never goes backwards. So after fighting an opponent of a particular level, Luffy can't go back and face someone weaker, with the exception of maybe Foxy for comical reasons, and Hody Jones because he acted as a reset after the time skip. But we've had this problem ever since defeating Kaido, because he was the strongest creature in the world. Land, air, and sea, which are all of the things. Where wouldn't Kaido be the strongest? But that's the problem, because how do you escalate from that? Even a Marine Admiral doesn't seem quite right after you've had Kaido. And even a Marine Admiral plus an Elder Star doesn't quite fill the bowl of combat nourishment we require as ravenous fictional pirate consumers. So serious question to all of you. Would you rather be used as a jump rope or turned into pizza dough? Who had it worse, Kaido or San? But here's the answer to how we escalate beyond Kaido. We take on all of the old men at once, because there's so few other options to escalate left at this point. So we've satisfactorily answered that for now, until we have another question, which is how we escalate things beyond all 5 elders in the next arc. And all I have to say is good luck, Oda. Is no one going to mention the fact that the elders literally have telepathy with each other with seemingly no limit on range? No! But what I will mention is that seeing that panel of the 4 remaining elder stars in their old man room was actually kind of sad. I'm so used to seeing the 5 of them together that seeing only 4 of them is a little bit depressing. Like visiting a tight friendship group in a retirement home after one of them has recently passed away. Also, I've changed my mind. We will talk about the telepathy, just because it does explain something rather interesting, which is the Elder Star hive mind effect. Whenever these 5 alleged individuals have traditionally appeared together, they have this habit of finishing each other's sentences. And whilst that can happen when you spend far too much time with the same people, this does explain quite a bit of that. And also why they get ominously silent at times, such as when Shanks came to visit and they were all pretending that they were busy doing paperwork. I bet they weren't actually doing any work, they were chatting amongst themselves. This might also explain why Imu almost never speaks, because if he's in on this telepathy group chat, and these are the only 5 people he ever speaks to, then there's no real reason to ever open his mouth. But then again, slight contradiction, because in chapter 1086 we saw Imu speaking via Denden Mushi. When Imu expressed his desire for Vivi, it had to be done via telepathic snail, so maybe Imu hasn't been led into the group chat. So the elders, they're connected, because as suspected, the other 4 also use their respective demon circles. We couldn't see any other numbers in this chapter, and I believe that Saturn's number was 5. So they're either a single being connected through one power that they share via themselves, because they're one thing, I'm confusing myself, or they're 5 separate beings connected by a series of powers, which would be fascinating, especially if it was devil fruit related, because I don't think we've ever seen devil fruits designed to function specifically with other devil fruits. It isn't a coincidence that we only saw the dead Vegapunks. I'm willing to bet that this is not a pre-recording of Vegapunk, but the actual consciousness of the Vegapunks speaking through punk records. So that is originally what I assumed as well, because it's hard to believe that it's a coincidence that these were the 3 who recorded the message, the 3 dead ones. However, whilst reading the chapter, I was very quickly talked out of that position by a big bird. When we cut to Big News Morgan's, he notices a clock in the background, which he also states is not the current time on Egghead, and that's the reason for it being pre-recorded. And just on that note, I think this might be the first time we have confirmations of time zones in One Piece, because we see that it's daytime on Dressrosa, but it's the middle of the night on Water 7, and I believe it's also night on Momoiro Island, which I guess makes sense, because we've got Dressrosa in the New World, then Momoiro and Water 7 in Paradise, so they would be on different halves of the planet. However, it's a bit more complicated than that, because it's always tempting to state that the One Piece world rotates like this, with the red line directly in the middle. But in fictional reality, according to Oda's notes, it operates as more of a tilt like this, with the red line and the grand line intersecting to form an X, which makes sense because that would explain why it's nighttime in West Blue but also day in East East Blue. Remembering that West Blue borders the New World, which is currently day, but West Blue is night, and that's not day. And East Blue is the opposite. East Blue borders Paradise, which is currently night, but East Blue is day. But a funky angle, that explains a lot. Apologies for the huge tangent there, but this sequence is really fun for weirdos like me, because it's the first time that I know of that we've been given a way to figure out these planetary time zones. Back to something actually relevant. I suppose it should also be said that Vegapunk has chosen his most positive aspects of himself to help record this message. Shaka was the aspect of good and Pythagoras was the aspect of wisdom, whereas the others represent violence, greed, thinking, and just flat out evil. So thinking about it that way, Stella definitely chose the correct satellites to help him with this ever so important message. That's also quite sad though. The idea that all of Vegapunk's positive aspects are dead and what we're left with is the bad ones. But also the way that the Vegapunks speak about the broadcast is very much future tense rather than present tense, although maybe Viz will clear some things up in that regard. But at the moment, all of the evidence points to this being pre-recorded. However, I would absolutely love a twist where the Vegapunks do still exist in some form as part of Punk Records. Going into a bit more technical detail, I do believe the logic for being able to signal boost to the whole world is due to the presence of the Marines. Shaka says that they should piggyback off their communication systems, and I think it's implied that this is only possible due to all of the ships that have gathered around Egghead Island and being able to hijack their system. In which case, summoning the largest naval fleet that we've ever seen in One Piece has turned out to be a terrible idea in yet another way, and the world government have again dug their own graves. Now, one reasonable idea that a lot of reasonable people have pointed out is why not just play the message on repeat? Just start, no need for delay, and keep playing the message on loop until everyone hears it. That way, the people who are ready, they get the truth bombs ASAP and there's no chance of being cut off, and those that aren't ready can just hop in whenever and join the loop, because you've got three geniuses here and not one of them thought of the smartest way to convey this information. So that makes me think, because I trust that these dudes are pretty smart. Is there some reason why everyone needs to experience it all at once? Or is this gap being left for a different reason? Because I've been seeing people proposing a rather sneaky idea, which is that this 10-minute time period is bait. Vegapunk created a clock to purposely put pressure on the world government by giving them some hope of stopping the message and encouraging all of the 5 elders to gather so that at some stage during the recording, we can cut to live footage of the elders in their demon forms to show the world. In which case, Shaka, Stella, and Pythagoras are all flexing their acting prowess right now. Because, look, here's the secret. Even if they wanted to, they can't reveal the truth immediately right now, because the truth was hiding safely up the top of the Holy Land in their old man room, where we don't have cameras. But now, our 5 truths have all taken the bait, and we are ready to show them to the world. It's a fun but convoluted idea because it either relies on the Vegapunk still existing in Punk Records, or somehow predicting that an Elder Star would show up, and it also banks on Vegapunk knowing that they have teleportation powers as well. But still, really fun idea. We turn the camera on, pull the shower curtain back, and expose the horrific bodies of 5, count 'em 5 old men, like a really demonic lemon party. We already learned in Dressrosa that the 10 minutes is more like a couple of months. Right, that's a good point. We can actually use fictional science to predict how long it's actually going to take us to hear Vegapunk's message. So after being drained of his haki, Luffy told Gyatso to give him 10 minutes in chapter 786. In reading weekly at the time, I distinctly remember this 10 minutes taking an absolute eternity to pass. And I think that there must have been an abnormal amount of breaks during this period, because it really didn't take that long at all. Luffy, or as Rebecca called him, Lucy, was back in action by the end of chapter 789. So by that measure, 10 minutes took us 3 chapters. So every chapter accounts for 3.333 etc. minutes, meaning that we should be hearing Vegapunk's message by chapter 1112. So by end of March or early April, according to the current weekly Shonen Jump schedule. Maybe even sooner, but I would be very surprised if it took longer than that, because Oda's not taking his time the way he used to back in the glory days of Dressrosa. And part of me also wonders if Oda might be milking the story teat just to make sure that he can include as many reactions as possible to the message, because realistically there's only so much space available in any given chapter. And in a story with over 1,000 characters, showing something like a global message, that is not a swiftly accomplished task. And really, that's just what you get for being so good at world building, you wonderful author. So I imagine that we'll be checking in with more and more familiar faces in the few chapters to come. Or at least that's what I'm hoping, because I'm really looking forward to seeing more reactions. We've gotten a couple of regular locations and seen some old friends, but you just know that figures like Blackbeard, Shanks, and Crossguild must be watching this as well. Funny that both the readers and the population in One Piece are waiting for the lore bomb of the century together. That's a pretty cool thought. The idea that we, as readers, find out the truth at the same time as the people living in world. Stories are very difficult difficult to balance because the really great ones make the readers feel invested in the world, as if they are mentally transported into it, which often means that if readers have too much information, the impact of that information being discovered by the actual characters is lessened. So it's usually a good strategy to reveal information to readers and characters at the same time. Otherwise, it's either old news to us or old news to the characters. And that can be done well, but a lot of the times it gets fumbled, which is why I've always appreciated that One Piece is a story told from Luffy's perspective. All we knew when this series started was whatever this boy in a boat in the middle of nowhere knew, and we discovered the world in the exact same way that he did. Although from a more meta angle, I can't help but think of Oda and his editors in the roles of the Vegapunks. Oda leaves a chapter claiming that there will be a big announcement to make, or a big lore drop revelation, so we as readers, we get ready. But then behind the scenes, Oda proposes to his editors that this revelation will actually be made a year down the line. But then one legendary hero editor goes, "No, that's too long. How about instead of 1 year, 1 month?" And Oda, he acquiesces, but either way, we're left hanging for a while. Also, Alice's name is spelled Arishe. So this is something that my brain didn't even register because I was just excited to see a name. But whilst her name is Alice, it has the Italian pronunciation. So it would be Alice, or however you pronounce it. I am not good at Italianing. But this is obviously because Water 7 is inspired by Venice, and get this right, Venice is in Italy. I've been there. You're not allowed to feed the birds. Apparently it's because the maintenance of cleaning up all of their leavings was bankrupting the city. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's all your fault, Hartery. But that's why a lot of Water 7 characters have somewhat Italian sounding names like Paoli or Rob Bellucci. That giant robot might come in clutch soon. Hopefully it does something. So I agree, and the key word there is giant, because I imagine that very shortly Luffy will be facing off against 5 giant things, demon things. And that's bad because he's only 1 giant. Dory and Broggy are of course on their way, which makes 5 giants versus 3 giants. And just as a side note, I need to see a panel where giant Luffy is standing side by side with Dory and Broggy, and maybe them just going, "You've grown, Straw Hat," or however it is they laugh, I forget. But even then, 3 is far from 5. So if we add in the Iron Giant, that takes us to 5 giants versus 4 giants, much more favorable. But I do wonder if there's a way for us to get to a solid 5v5 giant deathmatch. Or maybe I'm just being too greedy. All I'm saying is that there is at least one other person on the island with a devil fruit that could allow her to turn into a giant after having seen her hero Luffy do exactly that. Look at the panel where Dragon appears. He appears to turn into wind in the small panel beside that. The next scene shows some kind of lines racing towards Egghead. Suspicious. Alright, I wouldn't get too excited about this. What the commenter is referring to is this series of 3 panels. We have Dragon looking in a direction that appears to be west, but I guess that depends entirely on where the camera is positioned. Even if I was looking east, if the camera was on the other side of my body, it would look like I was looking west. But immediately after Dragon are these 2 sliver panels with directional lines, and you know what directional lines imply? They imply speed. And I could see how this can be taken as Dragon suddenly moving at some sort of high speed. But this is just one of the common visual devices that Oda uses to transition from one location to another. For example, in chapter 1089, we saw the same thing with Whoopsap in East Blue. The water level was raised after Leloucia was destroyed, and Whoopsap, he was very concerned. And I guess going by the same dragon logic, Whoopsap then turned into wind and raced off to Egghead Island because the same effect happens here. The idea is to create the illusion of a camera pan in the manga medium. So it's like a sharp pan to another location. If I was to give Dragon some credit, then, well, that would probably be a sign that I've been replaced by some sort of clone or even AI. But in this case, here's an idea. Dragon is always looking somewhere, usually east, but other directions are also available. What if his observation haki was so advanced that he could actually see what was happening thousands of kilometers or miles or whatever your elected unit of measurement is away? I think that would add some substance to him. Maybe that's why Dragon was asking, "Oh, where do you think Kuma's going? Oh, I'll take a quick look, see if he's there." He would become the world's ultimate voyeur, who has been watching Luffy grow up this entire time, just from a very safe distance, where he could never be threatened by the concept of parenthood. Remember, Liam, we will be at Elbaf by chapter 1116, and I bet you know why. So I do know why. So you would win that bet that I didn't take. I know why this thought exists, but I don't necessarily agree with it. It's because chapter 116 was when we were first introduced to Dory and Broggy as well as the concept of Elbaf, and it would admittedly be pretty cool if exactly 1000 chapters after that introduction is when we set foot on the island. Having acquired the strength of 1,000 chapters of journey to be worthy of the presence of giants. There's also a Reddit thread about this idea, and I love the first reply. 1,116? We are at 1,093, lol. There's no way Egghead takes another 23 chapters. That's over half a year with breaks. We will probably be off the island by 1,105, so we're 4 chapters past that deadline. And I could see Egghead wrapping up in the next 6 chapters, because I think we're definitely sticking with the need to run away. We're not winning here, so we let this message go out to the world and then get the hell out of here. But also, Oda is Oda, and more complications could always come up. I don't think that any of us expected Egghead Island to last anywhere near as long as it has, or be as impactful on the story as it has been. So there's always more that he could throw at us. And if you want to keep up with everything that gets thrown in our general direction, then please do subscribe to this channel for consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed.